All right, all right, all right. Welcome to another edition of Shabbat Lounge. This is Matt.
And Jake here.
Jake, we have a special guest, and so I'm going to just let him introduce himself by playing a little video, and you'll kind of understand where we're headed with this podcast. We're just going to jump right into it.
Sounds great.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to walk with dinosaurs? We're at the Paluxy River in Glen Rose, Texas, where the river is bone dry, an occurrence that only happens once or twice every decade. In front of me, I have 157 dinosaur tracks that we're going to follow. Let's go walk with the dinosaurs, shall we?
All right, and so John Adolfi is with us today of Lost World Museum. Hey, John.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Well, we are super excited to have you join us. And so those of you that aren't familiar with John's work, he is a creation, would you say you're a creation scientist?
I am a creationist who happens to dabble in the science of creationism.
Awesome. Well, we support that fully, and we know many of our audience members do, and many of our audience members are homeschool teachers. And what would you say? Do you have some things that might be useful to them?
Well, that's a good question. First off, we should be unashamed to approach Genesis from a literal standpoint, utilizing the genealogies to work backwards to find out just exactly when or approximately when, Adam and Eve first stood on this planet, how old life is on this planet, and the literal creation of 7 days that brought this all into fruition. It actually happened. It seems fantastic, almost impossible. We weren't there to observe it. Neither was Adam and Eve. They didn't see it either. They only woke up after it was done. Had to take the word of God that he did this prior to them coming into existence. And, these were 24-hour periods. These weren't thousands or millions of years. And, I will say this. I believe the earth itself, I'm talking about the granite. When people say, well, how, the earth is 4.51 billion years old. And I say, it could be 6 to 10,000 years. It could be a trillion years old. We don't really know. But life itself, and I give it a little leeway, 6 to 10,000 years. And we came from the loins of Adam and Eve. And there was a worldwide flood 4,400 years ago in the fossil record, and whatever's left over of nature, as far as what it looks like today is what we see. And so my getting back to my original statement, don't be ashamed. Don't feel embarrassed. Unabashedly move forward with this idea, and don't even, you're going to get criticisms, and teach the children. There's nothing wrong with that. I get accused of being doing hurtful things to children because of this belief, ironically enough, but it shouldn't surprise anybody, the kind of criticisms that you can get from "you're an idiot" to you're hurting children.
Yeah, right. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But well, we appreciate that you are out there doing that. There's not just I think there's more people waking up to it, and we hope and pray that more people will wake up to this reality and start teaching their children these things, and counteract all the the avalanche of material that is saying evolution and all the other nonsense that happens.
Right.
Well, we had a few questions for you tonight, and we just wanted to have you kind of briefly describe your faith journey, kind of what led you to this point, and having you create the museum. How'd you get here? How'd this happen?
Well, in 1984, I was in the Navy, and I was what you would call an agnostic, backslidden Catholic. Okay. That's how I would, just a person just doing their thing in the world. not trying to hurt anybody, but at the same time, not following any real moral code or any kind of God or anything, And I was walking on the ship one day. We were home ported in San Diego, and suddenly a thought jumped into my head. This was uninvited. This was there was nothing that preceded it that I could, recall. And basically, the question was, the Bible is the inspired word of God, which is really weird because I wasn't looking for this. But truth demanded that I answer the question. So at the speed of thought, I went down the path that there is no God, there is no Bible, and what do we have? Now, I understand that I do not have a whole ton of knowledge at this point of anything, just what I learned in grade school and high school, middle school. And also, too, I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. I didn't have any, dislike towards any particular, answer to the equation, other than I wasn't looking to become a Christian. I did have a bias towards that as far as what I thought that meant. And it wasn't extremely favorable. But here's what happened. After I traveled down the road of there is no God, that there is nothing other than what we see right here, 3 words popped into my head. It was so obvious. There was no hope. It was depressing, and it was dark. And I went in the speed of thought to the left, so to speak, and I just visited the position that the Bible is the inspired word of God. And by default, I said the weirdest words that would ever pop out of my mind. And that is, and I know this may seem strange to some, it must be. It's got to be. And the reason why that was so strange was because I wasn't looking to go in that direction. But by default, and because of my desire to know the truth, and I can be fooled, but I'm just saying, though, I was open to the truth. I concluded very quickly, it didn't take long, that the Bible had to be, the source of information for life. And I mean, I didn't think of it like that at the moment, but I just said it had to be. And that's what began this journey back in 84.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think more and more it seems like, there's a lot of information out there now, but there's so little. I guess you could parse it a couple different ways. You could say there's more information now, but less truth than ever, or you could just say it's, the truth has been hidden more than ever. So when you recognize that you do have scripture to stand on as truth, you can, it gives you a foundation.
I would say the difference between 1984 and 2023 is that the access to information and the speed that you can acquire information is just exponential. And, but there were distractions back then too. There was your UFOs and Scientology, and, the flat earthers had really not gotten off the ground, not like it is right now. These last 3 years have been unprecedented when it comes to that. And I'm just saying, though, that there's competing theories out there. I believe there was a hollow earth at one time, and I was excited about going up towards, the North Pole and trying to find that,
Yeah.
That intrigued me. A Loch Ness Monster intrigued me, I mean, all these things were are competing for your attention, and they're compelling, and they're interesting and fascinating, and yet they're right out of your grasp. What you don't realize is that they're just outside of your grasp to nail it, to know that it is absolutely the truth. It just gets you just so far, and then it stays that just slightly out of your reach. That's what they all have in common, by the way. I became a Christian, a Seventh-day Adventist, and I moved back home about a year later, and started selling real estate for my father. He owned a real estate company. And so this is 1985. It was in 1989 that I was just fascinated. I always was fascinated with giants and the idea of Goliath. And I always thought, wouldn't it be cool to be able to have a full life-size Goliath, to be able to show around. I even drew a full-scale size one back in '92. And we came up with this idea of maybe creating biblical dioramas, including a full-scale Goliath, called Bible Land Studios. And my wife right now actually runs that ministry, Bible Land Studios. And then we thought, well, I really want to meet and greet and reach the secular mind. And what I didn't realize, that now I can articulate it so much better, I'm looking for the agnostic that doesn't have a chip on their shoulder. It just doesn't know, isn't informed about certain things. And when presented with certain things in a certain way, they perhaps would find it intriguing enough to either consider it or hop on board if they're really that, interested at that moment, And
Yeah.
so in 2000, I commissioned Alfred Lee. He's been to Mount Ararat 4 times. He's searching for Noah's Ark in 1969. They extracted wood from what could be Noah's Ark wood from Mount Ararat in the ice. He then came back in 1970, and then in 1986, he interviewed 2 of the most credible eyewitnesses. And because he was an archaeological illustrator, he drew their memories in front of them. And both of them lined up perfectly, exactly where the saddle is, the saddle in the mountains, that is where it's at, the look of it. Both men don't know each other. George Hagopian died in 72, I think it was. And Ed Davis was younger, way younger than him. He saw it in 1943. Hagopian saw it in 1902 and 1904. And so I commissioned him and I said, Alfred, would you do the most accurate historical rendition of Noah's Ark in an art format? He says, I've been waiting 35 years to do it. So we took 3 years. And then in 2004, we launched it. We launched Bible Land Studios. We launched the painting called The Invitation, not to be confused with The Invitation by Dubois. He also came out with one with the same title, same theme. And so you have it. A year later, in 2005, while we were contemplating a more secular name, my wife came up with Lost World Museum. And so then, we started that as well, parallel to it. We did as much as we could with the resources we had. And then in 2010, I hired a strategic business coach. And he said, let's set this down for just a little bit, the museum. Let's build your real estate practice and then come back to it. And long story short, in 2018, 19, I started to pick up the pieces again and started to get reinterested and started to say, okay, what can we do? Let's take the fragments, like Jesus said, let's put them in the basket, and at least we'll have those and we can start working from there. Then in January of 2020, TikTok happened. I was turned on to TikTok by a marketer that I listened to. And I recorded my first video in April of 2020 for the museum. I tried real estate before that. I found it very interesting. Didn't know what I was doing. But when I did one for the museum, I found it much more satisfying. So I closed 2 accounts on TikTok and went full board on TikTok. In 3 years, we've done like over 1,000 videos, and we've got just almost 1 million followers on there. So we really, really focused on that. And then over the last year, we've been focusing on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and Rumble and X and whatnot. So
that's exciting to see that grow like that.
Yeah, it really is. It was a lot of work, but we reached a lot of people, and we reached the people even in the Middle East. They're on there now more than ever, but we would go live 5 days a week, and we would find people from all over the world, including once in a while from the Middle East. Once in a great while, they would get on. So it was very satisfying. Still is. We're just expanding and growing in other areas at the moment. So
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a great journey. So, well, one of the other questions I had was, I'm going to kind of jump topic slightly. So, something that's always, I borrowed heavily upon Carl Baugh. As we discussed earlier, I was a former classroom science teacher, and I would have to teach earth science, and I always try to expose my children to the creation theory, and I relied heavily on the things that Carl Baugh described. And for someone that might be new to kind of how how do you describe the earth, it kind of creation flood time, how do you describe that world as
Sure.
quickly and
Yeah.
easy as you can?
Yeah, certainly. So the world was much different as it is today before the worldwide flood. It supported life, longevity. What I mean by life, I mean life abundantly, unlike anything that we've seen. Maybe we'll get little glimpses of it here and there, maybe in a tropical jungle or in the forests of California where we see the redwoods. But we see, just life teeming, this earth teeming with life. And the way that I understand it, how it's pieced together, is that there were shallow seas or oceans, more land than there is today. And the atmosphere was twice the 1.5 to twice the barometric pressure as we see today, which that, and along with a higher oxygen rate, anywhere between 25 to 35% versus the 21% that we have today, including a higher carbon dioxide, lack of UVB, X-rays, gamma rays hitting us. You had 900-year-old people because we started off eternal and then we fell, but we still possessed a great deal amount of vital force. And as a result of that, the food, the perfect ground with the perfect ingredients that produce the food that we eat that's perfect. Adam and Eve originally were fruitarians, and then after the fall, they were vegetarian vegans. And that lifestyle, along with the earth, gave them not only maintain the longevity, but also I subscribe to the idea that we were much taller, much more robust than we are today. And like people like Goliath are nothing more than just a throwback to a genetic code that we once had that we lost along with our longevity after the worldwide flood, after the flood basically decimated the entire earth and just kind of mixed everything up. And it's like Wonder Bread, they took out all those nutrients and then injected four artificial ones and then say, hey, your bread's enriched. We live in an enriched earth that is not anything like it was before.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think actually you can make an argument, and evolution doesn't like this, but through time, the humans are getting dumber,
Yeah.
and the ancient man Adam, he was very smart and very
Yeah.
capable of probably a lot more than what we are. I think there's no doubt in my mind, and also. I think that, because of what we know about end times and Revelation, and there's going to be a lot of things that catch on fire and burn on this earth. And I think since the flood, the world has, kind of been drying out. So,
Yeah.
it's, I think there's just less water on the planet in general than,
especially in
forms.
Texas.
Yes, for sure. In Texas.
I got a chance to feel that.
Yeah, but I kind of wanted to
Sure.
take a little detour on what you said about the idea that we initially were in this, giant category, and then after the flood, we started to kind of regress into shorter people, I guess.
Yeah.
So how does that account for? So you have. I would assume Noah is giant, especially looking at some of your videos. You talk about how on the ark the beds were very big, and then the cages were very big, things like that.
Yeah.
So after that, you see the line of Shem leads to the nation of Israel, and then the line of Ham tends to lead toward the Canaanites. So the Canaanites are still giants, whereas the Israelites are not anymore. So how do you kind of explain that difference?
Oh, there's so much mystery and so little that we have, fragments of what we have. You almost have to like piece it together as best you can. When the conquistadors came over to Central America, South America, moved their way up to Georgia and Florida, they were there were still Native Americans that were upwards to 11 feet tall that they chronicled. And all of the, I'm kind of bounce around just a little bit.
Yeah, that's fine.
I believe that post Babel, when they dispersed, whether some of them dispersed before that, just kind of decided to take off and not centralize themselves there. Maybe some of Noah's good people decided to go ahead and start exploring the world early on. But, Babel didn't happen that far later anyways.
Right.
But they were still, my understanding is they were still pretty large at that point, because everywhere you go around the world and you find the huge megalithic stones of Baalbek or Stonehenge, or even when I've been down in Peru in Cusco, Ollantaytambo, and the like, the most ancient stories, they attributed to the builders to giants. Independently, that's the case. Even the Native Americans, the Modoc tribe, they said that the antediluvians were 10 to 12 feet tall. So, this stuff isn't fairy tales, and all these legends and stuff we hear. You need to just kind of like, okay, the premise is this. Let's just say the hypothesis. Hypothesis is that when it says that giants were in the world and after, let's just not go to that place where they say it's some sort of weird hybrid with an angel. That we were originally the giant intellect, giant human of yesteryear. That was the original man and woman. Okay, so we're going to use that as a hypothesis. Now, when we look around this fragmented earth and fragmented information, especially the further back you go, you start relying on or looking into Strabo and some of the more ancient writers, you start to find little bits and pieces. Maximus was 8.5 feet tall. We have movies about him that, Russell Crowe, what is he, 5'8",
Right.
And he could do some pretty magnificent things. His foot was like 1.5 feet larger than the normal man's foot. And he was able to run fast and jump huge. You just unbelievable. These giants were strong. We see that in like Angus McGaskill. He was 7'10", lived in Nova Scotia in the 1750s, worked for P.T. Barnum for a while. And he once on a bet picked up a 2,200 pound iron anchor on a wharf, and he walked with it until he stumbled with it and hurt himself. That kind of strength was the strength that maybe that's the strength they had, or even far greater. And that's the reason why we can see that those megalithic stones were handled so easily, where we look at them today and say, how did they cut them with such precision? How did they move them in such tight places? It's because they could.
Yeah.
I think
the giant theory definitely can explain a lot of that, and but once again, all of that goes against evolution, and there are different theories about it. The angel incursion is one, and that is one that I lean to quite a bit. But yeah, I think it's just fascinating. It's a world that we know so little about, and we're so far removed from it. But it's one of those things where I can't wait to be at the feet of God in heaven and asking him, I want to see the video of how you did this,
how that works.
Explain these animals to me. Why did you do this? What were you thinking?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and let me just interject this. If anyone's interested in where I'm coming from, there's one book that pretty much outlines what we follow as far as what our understanding is. Let me put it that way. And that's a book called Secrets of the Lost Races by Rennie Nuybergen. Secrets of the Lost Races by Rennie, R-E-N-E, Nuybergen. That's the book that I believe spells out Noah's Ark, giants, technology, and its application throughout Earth's history, and the evidences that we see, and has the best explanation for them, countering Eric von Daniken's theory that aliens were involved. At least he got one thing right, and that is a higher intelligence and a technology was involved that we don't have today.
Yeah.
But he assigns aliens instead of genius giant humans.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's I like your logo on your shirt with the monkeys, aliens, and
Apes,
Adam.
aliens, or Adam. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to like catch someone's attention, because those are kind of the three dominant religions, if you will.
And sometimes when we think something's really cool or whatever, other people just don't get it, and you got to sit there and explain everything to them. When I've gone out in public with the shirt on, I remember I was on the plane one time sitting in my seat, and this black girl walks by. She had to stop for a second because everybody was loading on. She looked down, she looked up, and then she looks down. She says, "Nice shirt." She got it almost immediately. People get it almost immediately what it means, and I'm glad for that, because too often, like I say, we invent things and think it's really cool and geek out over it, only to find
You're
out
the only one, right?
yeah, nobody understands what it means.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and kind of just to piggyback off of what Matt was saying about, the world doesn't tend to look at things the same way in terms of, giant ancient giants and stuff like that. But what's kind of interesting is even the church tends to not spend a whole lot of time on that. It kind of gets glossed over. And so even a lot of times the church people kind of scoff at that too, which I think is kind of doing a disservice to young earth idea. Even just I don't know if you've noticed that yourself, but yeah, there's a podcast that I tend to listen to about that kind of talks about these topics, and that's something that they had noticed. I'm just wondering if you noticed that too.
I don't spend a lot of time around, my daily church worship and everything. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, so I go to a Seventh-day Adventist church, and so I don't get to rub shoulders a lot with the Protestant world out there of various denominations. Now, when I go down to Texas and I go to the museum, I meet a lot of people, and we have more conversations about this topic than I will anywhere else. And interesting thing is this. Seventh-day Adventists are a very interesting breed as far as where they stand on this. Out of the, I don't know what it is now, 23 million Adventists in 220 countries or whatever, they're all young earth creationists that believe in giant humans, not hybrids, but giant humans in the past. The entire denomination does. So there's no fight when it comes to them understanding it or to whatever degree that they involve themselves in learning more about that. I remember Dr. Ben Carson, who was a Seventh-day Adventist. In 2016, when he ran for president, it got out that he was a young earth creationist. Now, this guy's a neurosurgeon. He separated conjoined twins at the head in a 12-hour or whatever it was brain surgery. And he believes in a young earth. And they were mocking him. Not everybody maybe remembers the mock. I do because I'm sensitive to that, meaning that it's of interest to me,
Right.
But yeah, he was mocked all right for believing that. What a kook. What a kook.
That's crazy.
It is. And just one other thing.
Yeah.
To your point. When they do discuss giant humans, I'm talking about non-Adventists, I'm talking about the rest of the world. It's always human hybrid angels, always. And I understand that because that seems to be the prevailing idea, both found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the book of Enoch, in the Talmud, even in the Native American legends. I've seen it in there too. So it has a very rich history of that. And I understand, and that is the prevailing theory within Protestantism.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know if it's because it's so weird that they, don't talk about it from the pulpit freely. I don't know,
I think it's weird because it's not talked about freely.
Well, and I also think there's a lot of people out there that they try to justify what they've learned from man and evolution, and combine it with what we see in truth of Scripture, and they feel this conflict, and they try to combine the two things instead of realizing that
one of them could be wrong.
yeah, that God meant what He said. That
Yeah.
this is
That's right.
and that you should believe God's word all the time over anything man says.
I
Yeah, I
just
think-
recently
go
heard
ahead.
that. I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, I just recently heard somebody make that point, and they said that for God to say in Genesis that He did it this way, and then in reality do it the other way, is so incongruous that you can't even combine the two with any degree of integrity on the part of God.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that also does lead to people who are confused and maybe fall out of faith. And it's very confusing for somebody that's not grounded and doesn't do the research. And, to me, it's what the enemy has done. He's done that on purpose. He's tried to pervert it, to hide it, to make it very confusing.
Yeah, I think there's this, I think we've been kind of, the idea of what science is has switched. I think it's turned into, well, science is the discovery of truth, whereas really science is a process of describing what the creator created. It's the process of describing what he made, not making up truth.
I agree. When we look at a ladybug, it screams, what kind of creator creates this? When a butterfly, when a caterpillar turns into a butterfly, it's supposed to boggle our mind to consider what incredible intelligence has done this creative process of transformation, and whatever other object lessons we can get from it as well too.
Right.
But that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the evidence of a creator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In part,
Right.
we'll go ahead and, harness electricity and stuff through science. Great.
Yeah.
What's really funny is the criticism that, well, if you don't like science, no, that's not what I said. Then stop using your microwave. Well,
Right.
Evolutionary science wasn't involved in the development of the microwave oven anyways.
Right.
I mean, Ben Carson separated twins conjoined at the head without any help from biological evolution, the theory.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well, and I think, and especially in the world that, with all the things that go around, and the sicknesses, and the thing that has been such a topic here in the last few years, so many people, they just tend to believe the lab coats, the scientists, the experts, I think, more than they do God's word. And I think they put more hope and more faith and trust in some of these things than they should, and they're going to be disappointed because man disappoints. We're just not very, very honest, very truthful, through the years. And, they really need to put their hope, faith, and trust in the Lord. And it's unfortunate that people don't do that and have got that kind of backwards.
It's true. I remember talking to a pastor one time. He was a Hispanic, and he said, the difference between Hispanics in the church and Americans, white Americans in the church? I said, what's that? He said, when Hispanic church members are visited, they want a lay person to come visit them. Whereas the Americans, they want a pastor to visit them. And I think it's this desire to have an expert here in the United States. We need an expert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where would we be without experts? Exactly.
Peer review. Where's your peer review? You know, Noah's Ark. Where's your peer review?
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of
you can
people
tell
out
them, you know, I have two or three witnesses is what I have.
Well, let me just add this, okay? A little bit about as far as my background or where I'm at with all of that. I don't have a degree. People say, "Well, what's your degree?" I don't have a degree, and I use that for my advantage because I'm not there to try to do battle with the intellectuals who disagree with us. That's not my mission, and that's not even my passion, because I can only hold my own so far, and you know a lot of them are much smarter than I am and can kind of run around and parry and maybe jab even better than I can, and that's fine. Okay, I'm not. That doesn't impress me or interest me. And I've heard, and another thing too, after doing this for 20 some odd years, you hear the same arguments or criticisms or belittlements over and over and over again. It's almost somebody have a manual and everybody just studies it and just then repeats it. There's not hardly any original thought out there when it comes to the criticisms of creationism. It's funny that I even came to that conclusion on my own, but it is. But you know what I am? I'm the white collar dude. I'm the guy that goes shoulder to shoulder with the agnostic out there that's just trying to figure it out, who hasn't heard something cool enough to get their attention. That's who I am. I'm not the guy that has the degree. I'm not the guy that is the intellectual giant that is going to spar like Kent Hovind or some of these others that can do that effectively. That's not me. I'm the guy on the street. I'm shoulder to shoulder with whoever wants to hang out. That's it.
Yeah.
You know?
That's awesome. And it takes everybody, you know, on different
Sure
levels.
does.
And definitely be
if
watching
anybody
out.
if anybody
resources.
follows us or just kind of hangs out or whatever, you know, gets alerted by, you know, any one of our ways, we have a newsletter that we send out once in a while. And but get ready, we're going to have some power pack stuff coming out soon.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. Well, one of the questions that I had was, you know, what do you see as the biggest obstacle in teaching I call them normies, the people that are, you know, that just kind of like what we were talking about, that trust in the little g gods of this generation more than the true God of the Bible. You know, what do you think? How do we reach them? What's the biggest obstacle to getting to them?
It's getting their attention is number one. You know, they always say when you do a video, you got to have a hook. You know, getting their attention is important. Once we get their attention, then I hope that we have something that's logical, that warms the heart, and that is intensely interesting. And I believe the truth is all that. And I believe that the closer you get to what the actual truth is, the more it's going to be all those things. And I believe that, you know, it won't necessarily be any one thing. Each individual is a little different. You know, some people are going to gravitate towards Noah's Ark, and other people are going to find, you know, fast forming, you know, rock or fossils and the reality of that, or giant human footprints they're going to find interesting. You never know. But if we can just plant some seeds so that somebody at some point can, when they're ready, can harvest them, then that's great. One of our goals is to get people get to know us, and then we find out what they're really interested in. And we have, you know, some resources that we personalize and say, hey, shoot me your mailing address, your best mailing address, and I'll send you something. And we do that every once in a while, but only when they ask for it or they get close enough to us to where we can perceive what that personalized thing that they would enjoy best.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think Jake talks about it a lot. And what do you say about seeds?
Yeah, you can't, and I'm guilty of this too sometimes, is you can't just dump your whole bag of seed out in one spot, because plants don't grow like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're wise to wait on people and let them come to you. I think too many of us, we chase after people and try to force things that aren't meant to be, and that's a good approach.
Yeah, and I think when we follow the Messiah's example, you know, he threw out some seeds, and the people that were interested asked him to, feed him more, feed them
That's
more.
right.
So, and he didn't chase anybody.
No, I take a real not laid back, but sort of casual approach to this because I don't want to close anybody, and like you say, chase them. They'll come on their own. I came on with nobody approaching me.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that for a second. You're on your own. You're just 3,000 miles away from home. You could think and do anything you want because you're 20, 22 years old and you got the wind by the tail and you're in the Navy, you're in San Diego, best weather in the world, by the way.
Oh yeah, for sure, no doubt.
And then to then become a Protestant Christian within a very short period of time. I mean, within months, it's like, no. I was the last person on, if I were to vote objectively, I'd be one of the last people on that ship that would become a Christian. Just no, not me. So yeah, he can convert.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we get the the pride built up, saying, "Oh, he needs me in order to make this happen." It's like, no, he's letting you help.
That's why fly casual. It takes the pressure off yourself, and it also takes the pressure off for any decision that someone in front of you may exhibit. It doesn't. It just I mean, there's a time and a place to get where there's a strong appeal or intensity, but I just haven't found where that exactly is. I just, like I say, I fly casual, and it seems to work. Kind of matter of fact approach.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I've been I've been around the world of high pressure sales before, and I never liked it. I never liked the things that they would ask people and the way they would pressure them. And I never thought you just don't. I don't think that's the way God operates. He doesn't do that to people. So he doesn't put them in a corner and go decide now where you're going to go. I mean, he doesn't treat us that way.
No. And early on in my Christian experience, I tried that whole thing, not knowing that I wasn't supposed to do it. It just seemed like I should. That is kind of like entrap somebody and then just, press the issue. And it was, I look back on it now and say, oh, what were you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Well, while I have you, I also wanted you to tell us a little bit about Mr. Joe Taylor. I had the Joe Taylor Giant book, and I think you revised it, and I highly recommend the original. And I just wanted you to tell a little bit about Joe and what he worked on.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of it right now, but what we did was before Joe passed away, we had an agreement, he and I, to take his book called Giants Against Evolution. It has got to be one of the best giant books I've ever seen in my entire life. And I have read or been exposed to at least 6 to 10 different giant books. They're not very abundant, okay? You don't find too many, but he was, and so anyways, we turned it into an ebook. So we sell the e-version of it for like almost half the price of what his book, would normally sell for. And so fast forward, and I'll show you if your audience can see this, if we do see but I'll tell you what it is. Valley of the Giants was the next book. I loved this book as well too. And I got a whole bunch from the daughter of one of the co-authors, and I sold them all. And I sold the last one, I don't know, about a year ago. And I'm like going, why did I do that? I want that, if nothing more for reference. And then I got thinking, what if we were to turn Valley of the Giants into a ebook? So first off, I got on eBay. I had to wait almost a year before one even appeared on there.
Wow.
And I snatched it for $20. And so here I have this book. And so I contacted the daughter and I said, hey, I want to turn this into an ebook. She says, well, we don't own the rights to it anymore. Well, I said, who does? And she said, well, Dr. Carl Baugh. So I give Dr. Baugh a call and I said, hey, are you going to be reprinting this? He goes, no. And I said, well, would you mind if we did in an ebook fashion and you guys can have a file of it and you can do whatever you want with it. We'll give it away, sell it, whatever. He says, I think that sounds like a good project. So short story long, I got to tell you the long story because it's just kind of cool. So what we were going to do is take this apart, scan it, and turn it into a PDF. You have your ebook, right?
Right.
Well, we were already doing a real estate book of mine on something called Designer. And so we decided we would take these pages and retype all of the type so that it's all nice and clean.
Right.
And then we took all the 40 some odd pictures and we cut them electronically out. Then we sent it through AI and colored them as much as we could, enhanced them, and then put them back into the ebook. And now we got this either Kindle version or a PDF version or whatever of this book that we pre-launched. And then we're going to be launching it again with a new cover very shortly. Matter of fact, today, Valley of the Giants is going to also be a paper version. We got one copy from my publisher, and I went down to Glen Rose. I didn't spend a lot of time with Dr. Carl Baugh this time around, but Saturday, a week ago Saturday, I went up to him and I said, Dr. Baugh, I want you to see what the paper version looks like. Now, you see this right here? This is like 5 by 8 inches, and it's all black and white. What I showed him was an 8.5 by 11, all color with this beautiful brand new cover of a giant walking through the mud of the Paluxy with a dinosaur in the foreground. And he looks at it and he goes, oh my, this is incredible, he says. And I says, I'm going to send you 10 copies so that you can sell them in your store. He says, we'll sell this out immediately. And I said, oh, well, good. And I said, then he's got the copy in his hand, right? And then he's kind of doing this with me. And he said, I go, did you want to give me the back? Just, did you want me to give this back to you? I said, well, do you want it? He goes, of course. And I said, it's yours. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. So we're just starting the paper copy. Okay, so let me just say this, because some of your listeners out there, viewers, are going to wonder, well, where do I get it? We're creating a library on gianthumans.com. That's what we're doing right now. Yeah. It's also in our store on Lost World Museum, but to have a store or a library just about giant humans is too cool, you know?
Yeah.
And the URL is cool. So that's where you can go. And just to give you a sneak peek, we got the permission to do this book as well too. This book is even going to be, in some respects, better. It's called Giant Man Tracks.
Oh wow!
Ooh.
Now, and again, we're going to retypeset the whole thing. It's got photos through the whole thing, black and white, just like the other one. But instead of just AIing these with a little bit of color, the daughter sent me 400 slides, of which 75% of this book is going to be digitized 35 millimeter color slides from 1974.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, that'll look cool.
Oh, the quality is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
So anyway, gianthumans.com. That's the only thing I'm going to plug today, other than just, Lost World Museum on whatever your favorite, social media site is.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic, and we will do our best to get the word out and the message out about that. And we want everybody in our audience to support you at Lost World Museum and go check out everything you're about. You've got multiple platforms. You mentioned your TikTok, podcast. You've got a website. You sell merchandise, and we just encourage people to go check it out. And we want more and more people to use you as a resource, and especially as they teach their children that God's word is true and you can believe it. That's what we want.
Yep, absolutely.
Jake, did you have something else you were going to ask?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I was going to ask what's one of the most exciting things you're working on right now or that you have in mind for the future, but you gave us like 3 or 4 things that are real exciting. So,
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you, I'll give you a real another sneak peek.
oh, all right.
The same daughter, you'll see it on Giant Humans as you can get signed up for the email to get alerted. So Giant Man Tracks is right now a sign up email to get alerted. And then we have another book called Man, Dinosaur, and History, which is the expanded version of this by the same author. And she gave me permission to do that. And when I was going through, and guys, I digitized all 400 slides. 1 minute, it took me a little over 1 minute for each slide. Got a $500 digitizer, put them in there, and digitized all 400 of them. And I had all these leftover ones. And I'm like going, well, what are all these to? I guess they're not to anything. So I one day I opened up the Man, Dinosaur, and History, and all of a sudden I found all the rest of those 35 millimeter slides in that book. It's much thicker. It's going to take us more time. That's going to come out in early part of 2024. One we're working on between now and the end of the year is called, has anybody ever heard of, probably you haven't, J.R. Jockmans, Jockchmans.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Jockmans was the one that did the grunt work for the book Secrets of the Lost Races that I mentioned earlier, and he got an attaboy in the book. When I spoke with Jockmans, he was the one, he felt like he was owed a little bit more than an attaboy. Well, he gave me his manuscript back in 2005. He's passed away. And we're going to be republishing. Matter of fact, I'm almost done retypesetting the whole thing. And then we're going to go get photos, the best photos of all the out of place artifacts, the anomalies that he talks about in this. And it's going to be called Strange Relics in the Earth, it's called. And that's also on, is it on Giant Humans? No, I don't think it is. But look for that as well, too.
Okay.
That's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to check out Giant Humans. That's pretty fascinating. So, you know, something that I really enjoyed about Mr. Taylor, you know, he was just a wealth of information, and his stories were pretty incredible. And I would stop by Crosbyton when I would go see my parents, and I would take my kids with me, and you know, he would get on their level, and he loved seeing kids in there, and he would talk to them and ask them questions. You know, what does your science teacher say about this? And he'd say, well, this is how this really works. You know, I loved him doing that. And, you know, just he would tell these stories about, you know, finding giant bones, especially with the Native Americans, and they'd find these red-haired giants, and, you know, there'd be articles written about them, and newspaper things would come out, and then it all just would disappear. And you know, and then that's made it very difficult to track some of those things down. But
usually under the guise of some museum.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's why his Giants Against Evolution is so cool, because he talks about giant bugs, giant mammals, giant fish, giant reptiles. I mean, he goes through the plant world and then talks about humans. I mean, he hits it on all biological levels. It's really good.
Yeah.
That's cool. Real quick, I just wanted to jump back to something we were talking about with your trip to Peru, right? The monolith there, the monolith structures there.
Yeah.
Something I noticed in one of your videos, you kind of mentioned, but you didn't really go into detail about it. And then I see a lot of the naysayers put comments similar to so with the stones being so tightly together, and it looks like, you know, the soft stone theory, right? But a lot of people are saying, well, what if that was just you know, ancient concrete and that kind of thing? So what's your response on that?
I'm still up in the air about it. I'm still, you know, the one theory is that there's a bunch of rocks and then they just plastered it with concrete, you know. One is that they had huge bags and they filled it up with concrete and then just, you know, let the bags disappear or deteriorate or whatever, you know. That was another. The other is that they were able to cut them in some way that we really have not figured out and then move them and then fit them. Oh, it's almost as if somebody stacked one huge rock and then cut it out with a laser and then, curved it. Cause they don't they're not flat like this. A lot of them, if the seam is right here between two rocks, they'll come out like my hands, they'll come out a little bit,
kind of beveled.
Yeah. They come, so if they come out and then back in, and then they're butt up against,
Yeah.
Billy Caldwell, who is 91 years old, and he's an oil man. And he was telling me that when the oil industry kind of was in disarray and he wasn't making much money, he went to doing rock quarrying. Now he's down there in the Fort Worth area. And he told me that they built a bunch of things for zoos and stuff. And they would bring 20 to 50 ton stones to these places and then stack them or whatever. He said there was a time where we tried to get more than two of the stones, but two of the stones to fit as tightly as he could. He'd been to Peru, so he's seen what they do there. He said, John, I'll tell you something, with all of our modern machinery, with all the diamond blade cutting tools we had and grinders, we could not get them to flush up against each other very well.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is incredible. People think that just men with nothing more to do all day than just take a rope with wet sand and grind through these rocks is the answer. It is not the answer.
No.
Yeah, it's definitely not that.
Yeah.
No.
But
it's not getting there. It's not just in Peru. That tight fitting rock stuff is all over the world, and it's the oldest buildings, is where you find this. And
has anyone cut into those rocks, cut them in half and see what's kind of inside there?
I don't think so, but I'll tell you what, I wanted to bring a metal detector. There's probably no metal inside. And if there ever was, it's probably, completely gone, but I still would like to take a metal detector and just see if there's anything to be heard.
Yeah.
This is one test. That's all. Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. I think we need to take one and sacrificial, break it open, see what's going on.
I have a feeling what we're going to find inside is just solid rock.
Yeah.
And then we're going to be going, I thought maybe we might be able to solve this, or at least put a little bit. No.
Oh, great. Only more questions.
More rock.
Well, we want to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and there's a need for it in the kingdom. And we have the thing in common where we keep a seventh-day Sabbath. We always like to talk to Sabbath keepers who understand that we're supposed to do that. And so I support a local coffee shop. I go out of my way because I drive a lot, and they're a Seventh-day Adventist coffee shop, and I make sure and support them because I don't want other people getting my money. I want my money to go to people like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, we appreciate you taking time to talk to us. And Jake, you have anything else?
No, I'm sure we could sit here and discuss this for hours and hours, and I'm sure you have the back the history to do that also, but we just appreciate you coming on, and it's been a good discussion, and we look forward to seeing some of these projects you're working on come to fruition, and that's exciting to see.
We're very excited about it. And I appreciate you. This has been very inspirational for me personally, and I hope that it did the same for your viewers and your listeners.
All right, I appreciate it. Well, if you'll stay on the line for just a second, we've got to wait for this to finish recording. And but anyway, this is Matt and Jake
signing out.